And without further ado, we warmly welcome our panelists today. Some of them may be familiar faces to you. Mr. Clarence T., Deputy President, Administration, who is our chair for today. Associate Professor Benjamin Ong, Senior Vice President, Health Education and Resources, NUS, and Chair of the Expert Committee on COVID-19 Vaccination. Mr. Kevin Chua, Chief People Officer, Office of Human Resources. Mr. Roy Tan, Director, OETU. And Ms. Catherine Koh, Organizational Psychologist from NUS Health and Wellbeing. And now, we are very pleased to invite DPA to share his opening remarks. DPA, please.
Hello, everybody. Actually have a wellness moment prepared. So the one that we just did was a bonus. And so some of you would have seen that, or would have known that we are very big on mental wellness in the past. In particular, especially in the past 1 or 2 years. And recently, our Health and Wellbeing Unit sent out this little blurb to HODs and deans and faculties and have asked them to pass it along to some of you. So some of you may have seen it already. If not, you will be seeing it soon. So I thought I'd take the occasion to share with you one of these blurbs that they have sent. And the topic was 4 things you can do to spark joy. Swipe. Okay. So, things to do to spark joy in your life. So there's a little bit of 4 suggestions here to spark joy in your life. One is bust a move. Walk, gym, stretch, sing or dance to your favorite song. So if you are, not yet. Now here is where we invite our fellow panelists to sing and dance, but make sure that in your day, you're not just sitting in your room or in your office, sitting in a chair, looking at a computer all day long. It's not going to be very good for your physical well-being. So make sure you schedule some time in your work week to exercise and even to a tune or 2. And so make sure you do that. Next one is keep a journal. Reflect, ask yourself a question. What surprised me today? What touched my heart today? What am I grateful for today? Some of you may have developed personal habits on this. I'll share with you one of my own personal habits. I do something in my weekly calendar called a gratitude hour. So during the gratitude hour, usually Friday, sometimes on Friday, usually end of the day, the last thing I do for the week is to look at some of the meetings I've had in the week that has just passed and send WhatsApp thank you messages. And as a form of showing gratitude and appreciation. Because sometimes during the course of the week, things fly by very fast, right? And you really didn't have time to kind of appreciate your fellow colleagues and all your fellows that have gone out of their way to help make things happen. And so it's important to do that. For me, actually, there is a very personal benefit, which is my way of practicing gratitude. Nurture your relationship. Give your time, energy, love, and compassion to the people you care about. So it's quite important to do this. I tell you something I used to tell people in the last 10 years of my career. I told people that work is number 6 in your life. After your spouse, after your kids, after your parents, after your in-laws, whether you like them or not, after your own health, and then work. And actually, there are 6 balls that you juggle in your life. These are 6 different balls that you juggle. Some of them are more fragile than others. Some of them are made of glass, some of them are made of rubber, and so on. But be aware which one is more fragile, and make sure you spend and devote some time to it. Next one, make an album of positive memories. Keeping positive is very important. There's a lot of things that can get you down in life. The negative stories you tell yourself in the mirror every day is don't let it overwhelm you. It's very natural for us to be cynical. Singaporeans are very good at complaining. You can make it a national pastime if we ever wanted to. But it's important that all of us be a force for positivity, force for good in our lives. And because that will spread and cause that to spread around to the people around you. And that's quite important. So wherever you can, be a force for good, be a force for positivity, not only in your private life, but in the workplace as well. So I hope that you all can do this. And then in itself, when you embark on some of these things that spark joy in yourself, it will inevitably also spark joy in the people around you. Thank you very much for coming to this town hall. Before I forget, these suggestions are brought to you by Dr. Celestio, so don't listen to me. I'm not a medical professional or anybody who has academic credentials in this area. Listen to our clinical psychologist, Dr. Celestio. So thank you all for coming to this town hall today. There's no doubt the pandemic has really altered the way we have worked. Until this pandemic, I never wore a mask. Well, actually, I should take off this mask. The rule is if I'm 2 meters away from the audience, I can take off a mask. You can hear me a bit better, right? It's a bit clearer. So until this pandemic, I never wore a mask. I never actually heard of Zoom until this pandemic. I think most of you haven't either. Come to work every day. Now I do ARTs, practice safe distancing, and read COVID-related circulars. Thinking back, actually, if you think back, the things that have kept us able to work remotely through this pandemic is quite amazing that we are able to do it. And many a times we kind of take things for granted. Just your ART kits, we probably spend more than $1 million every month to give free ones to you all. There's a whole machinery behind that to make that happen. Your Universe app, without the Universe app, all of us will be doing safe entry scanning, and we have to go and put somebody at the entrance of every building to do manual checking. Imagine what an army, we've got 200 over buildings. Can you imagine we have to fill an whole army of people to do this? But today, your safe entry is automatically done once you log into our Wi-Fi. There are a whole army of people who have been making sure that some of these things work in the background. Next. So behind the scenes, many of you, or many of us, labor to keep each other safe and enable us to work remotely. We support one another as we figure out how to deliver education, do research, support enterprises, forge ahead in a lot of our OE initiatives. And as a university, we have been really very proud of all of us and all of you for adapting to this pandemic as well as we have, in big ways and small, in being there for our students and in being there for each other. So thank you very much. This pandemic has also seen an uptick in the number of students and staff reaching out to us for mental health support. And many of us have experienced increased stress levels, dealing with new administrative demands that as a result of the pandemic. And some of us are feeling a bit burnt out. We appreciate your increased awareness and support for the mental well-being at the workplace for yourself, as well as for each other. This part is really important. We've never had more conversations about mental wellness we have more conversations about mental wellness in the last 2 years than we had in probably last 20. And it's important and thing to be. The workplace of the future, parts of it is here already. The hybrid way we work, the increased emphasis on mental well-being, I think are just 2 features of the future of the workplace. The focus of today's town hall is to discuss how we can prepare for the workplace of the future. And this workplace will become a reality not by a sudden change. So it's not like we'll suddenly arrive at it, but will likely happen through evolution. And this evolution is really an opportunity for all of us. It's an opportunity for us to reimagine the workplace of the future. What are we exactly coming back for? To that end, we are starting a series of conversations. We want to hear from you. What questions you have, what are the things that will appeal to you, what would be good, and your voice is important to us. We also want these town halls to be forums where we can listen and co-create this workplace of the future. Refresh our policies, share best practices and plans. For example, Office of Finance, in their new office renovation, has planned for a new normal, and I think a better normal, where the assumption is that only 60% of their staff would be in the office at any one time. And their challenge will be to figure out how to continue to build a strong, cohesive, and productive team within such an arrangement. We are going to schedule a number of such conversations throughout the year and share how the community is thinking about this subject, as well as to facilitate two-way communications, increase the community participation in thinking about the workplace of the future, to generate ideas and inputs, and also to come back when some of the different parts of the university, different teams and departments and schools try out different things, come back and share whether it has worked for them or not. So let's treat it as a journey of experimentation. We will not have the right answer, and it may not be a right answer, and it may not be a right answer that will apply to everybody. But let's join, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming these conversations, keep them constructive and open, and even warm and joyful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DPA. Next, we welcome Associate Professor Benjamin Ong and his update on the COVID-19 situation. Associate Professor Ong, please.
Thanks. Hope you can hear me. But following DPA, I'm going to take my mask off for the first time in front of an audience for quite a long time. So I'm not quite used to this, although I used to do speaking in large audiences quite a bit. My job is to give you a little bit of an update, but if you've been keeping up with what's been happening, I will try and run through this as quickly as possible and just concentrate on a few slides at the end. So if we look around us, I thought it's good for us to look at Singapore, look at NUS, and then maybe give us an idea of how we can look forward and think about how to live with COVID. First, locally. And you've been hearing quite a lot about this, but I thought I'd give you a context of what we've been dealing with right from the start until now. What you're seeing on screen are the different variants or waves of the COVID virus since the very start. But this is the picture in the US. And you can see that the US has been dominated by essentially Alpha first and then Delta. And in the US, maybe sadly, unlike Singapore, they are a lot less cohesive, largely because of the way the country is organized. So the infection rates there are much higher than what we see here. Right at the very end, you can see Omicron, right? So when we look at the US pattern, we must bear in mind that they have some recovery-based immunity. And the nature of viruses is such that it works to try to overcome that immunity. And of course, this virus is always changing shape. And this is just the phylogenetic tree of Omicron after it was first discovered. And it's a completely strange branch that is sort of different from all the other variants with a lot of mutations. Looks like a Christmas tree compared to the rest. And you can see the number of variants now. In there, in the various color codes, are Singapore's contributions to this tree as well. This is Singapore's pattern. And the height is not a sort of expression of how many cases were infected. The height just shows the dominance at different phases of time. And we are now Omicron dominant. But if you're looking at our curve, you're wondering why is that this funny shape. It's because BA.2 took over from BA.1. You can see the two different colors at the end, right, of this particular chart. But we had a Delta wave. And I think what is really important to bear in mind is that we didn't have very much significant community spread because of the nature of what we did right at the start. The good news in the Singapore context is we have a lot more trust. And I think all of us are apprehensive. I was number one in NUHS to get my vaccine, NUH to get my vaccine. So first person. So despite having looked at all the safety data, I'm human, right? I was, of course, a little bit nervous, and I had to do an interview with CNA immediately after that. So between myself and Prof. Tan Cho Chuan, who now is Chief Health Scientist, and our former university president, both of us had to talk to the press. So that was a little bit of a hairy experience. After 15 minutes of observation time, I was still fine, after 30 minutes, and we started the interview. But you can see in these 4 charts that are generated from a third-party site, looking at data from us, and this is actually a very good site, that the impact, essentially, of our high vaccine uptake, which is the top left-hand graph, we are actually over 90% for each age band, except for the 5 to 11, which is rapidly approaching even that, right? And we're boosted close to 70% of our population, so we're very, very high. This is very important because we don't have a recovered person's immunity wall. Our immunity wall is all being built on top of vaccines. And PM has actually said that our main aim is the bottom right-hand side, and that is to control the number of deaths in Singapore. If you look at the peak of Delta, which is a very small peak next to the very high peak you're seeing now from Omicron, and you look at the height of the deaths, the height of the deaths that we're seeing in Delta is because we were vaccinating to try and catch up. But it had a huge impact on changing the curve shape. Now, compared to Omicron, the curve seems to come up quite a lot, and you see quite a lot of deaths reported. But imagine what it would have been if not for the fact that we have a very good sort of vaccination penetrance in our population. Yes, we have safe management in place. I wanted to wait a while to plot the curve for cases because I think it's turned, right? But how fast, no one knows. So that's the hope we have. Singapore is a very interesting pattern of case numbers. Have you noticed or not? Tuesday is always the highest. And since I was DMS and MOH and I was looking at different outbreaks, it's always like that. It's almost as though you're sick over the weekend. It doesn't matter whether the government has opened polyclinics and GPs. You don't want to see a doctor then, you know. You want to turn up on Monday morning and queue with everyone else to get an MC. So Tuesday, we always see that peak. And that's why it's important in epidemiology at any rate for you to actually smoothen with the 3-day or 7-day moving average, right? Which is what that earlier graph tried to show. Okay, so this is just to show you the uptake. The last line that's coming up is the kids, 5 to 11. Now, we don't have something below the age of 5 yet, and that was going to take some time for us to figure out. And this is our booster program that is, I think, going quite well. But by the way, we're much higher than the UK at present. And worldwide, we're probably number 4 in terms of coverage. So Singapore likes comparisons, you know, so it's a good comparison essentially to have. But why are we doing this is essentially this, you know. What happens if you don't get vaccinated? And is there a difference between being boosted and not? And to be fair, the greatest trade-off in terms of life saves is as you get older. And at about the age of 40, suddenly the rates start to climb. Now this is Omicron based. Delta actually started to climb at 40 quite a bit, right? But the risk is markedly different. And I think Minister shared recently, or MOH shared recently, is 33 times higher as a whole of dying unvaccinated versus vaccinated. But if you're over the age of 80 and you don't get vaccinated, it's as much as 100 times, right? So it's that bad. Then with each variant, you know, we have to figure out how long does a person stay infectious. And is there a difference between a person who's vaccinated and not? And the answer is yes, right? These are the curves that show what is referred to as a CT value. For those of you that understand PCR will know what that means, right? The higher the value, the less virus particles you can find. It doesn't mean it's infectious. But by and large, on average, by day 6 or 7, more than half of the individuals have got CT values that are higher than 25. And 25 around there is the pickup time limit of our ART kits that we have, right? So you can roughly tell that when your ART kit turns negative, the likelihood that you're infectious is not very high. Now, why don't we wait like China, you know, to 21 days before we release you? Well, the bottom line here is that it's a diminishing return. Most of the infections are going to occur very early on, all right? So if you keep people locked up, it doesn't make much difference. Our community measures will change. And we are actually governed by quite a bit of guidelines from MOH, from MOE, and MOM. So we have a blended application on site. And some of them actually are not fully aligned, but that can't be helped, right? Particularly at this stage. By the way, we're still at DORSCON orange, right? We've not actually climbed down from that. When I started work as DMS many years ago, we were of course at green, and we actually went to yellow at least once during my term before this, right? But it's only towards the very end of my term, as I handed over to Kenneth, that it actually turned orange very, very fast. And I was actually very worried it would turn red, because that would have meant that we have a complete emergency. But they decided to draft supplementary legislation that allowed us to stay at orange and still do many things. Okay, so let me just give you my take of risk. So what determines transmission risk? Density, how close you are together, whether you're generating aerosol like I am by talking, the ventilation, how close you are to each other and how long you spend. Hence all this safe distancing, which is actually means minimize your social circles, because that's when most of it will pass to each other. How about here? Now we have a similar sort of picture here. 83% of our students declared that they're fully vaccinated. And over 90% of our staff. So that gives you a rough idea. That declared doesn't necessarily mean they weren't vaccinated, just that they're a bit stubborn, to report this in. 73% is research. So for those of you doing research, you might want to make sure your students are, a bit more careful. And our own ART actually shows the curve peaked the week before, right? If you believe this, and it also goes by our reports. So I have a validation of where we are in the national curve, right, by looking at our own. And we also have wastewater surveillance, although our pattern looks a bit different from the national. You can see it's not as intense a color now, but it's more widespread as you go from left to right in time, right? Now, our stance, we follow prevailing MOH, MOM, and MOE guidance. And I'm not going to go through this in detail because it is actually in our guidance. But what I will say is that right now, about 50% of us who are able to work from home can come to work. Now, that means that all those that cannot work from home are already here, right? So actually, it's likely to be more than half. And we've moved to vaccine differentiation. But our students, for now, are exempt, mainly because the feeling is learning is so key, right? And apart from that, there are various sort of group sizes that we have to adhere to. But I thought what was actually important is for me to move on to talk about how you should think about living your life. What does COVID resilience really mean? I just want to spend just a minute or so on this. You need to understand the guidance and the stance, regardless of what happens around you. Mask use, group sizes, ventilation, and density. The base assumption we make is most people are vaccinated and boosted, and most people will be considerate. So, who is at increased risk? Some people are more likely than others, right? And severe means that a person may need hospitalization, oxygen intensive care, or die. So when we go and visit such people or we live with such people, be a little bit more cautious. It means our elders at home, those that have immune compromise, older adults, for example, and pregnancy, right? An unvaccinated pregnant woman is actually at very, very high risk of doing badly. Okay. And this is just the risk that's been computed somewhere else, not ours. Ours is about 100 times if you're 85 and above, if you're not vaccinated. So this is just a list of medical conditions. And if you think about it, as all of us get a little bit older, we do accumulate some of them, right? But these are the ones that put these individuals at greater risk. So if they happen to stay with you, that's essentially what you should keep in mind in your behavior and how you act. And these are additive. It's a bit like, buying health insurance. They are like riders that you have to pay if there are things that are on board and you have more than one of these. So what should one do? Well, number one, learn how to protect yourself. No matter what the government does, ensure you're vaccinated. Make sure your vaccination is current. Wear a mask if you cannot maintain a safe distance, even when it becomes optional. At some stage, it will become optional, right? Don't feel shy about it. In some ways, be like the Japanese, right? And if you're not well, please stay home, right? Don't infect people unnecessarily. For now, as Clarence has actually shared, you get ART kits given to you. How long this continues, I have no idea. It depends on the generosity of NUS. All right, so be considerate, pay attention to personal hygiene, basic things that we've been teaching, and be aware of what's going on around you, how crowded it is, how dense it is. right? And I think by and large, we can transition to a stage where we can live with this a lot more safely. And final points, the case numbers should improve. I think going by pattern, it should dive quite a bit next week, right? COVID, however, is not likely to go away. This virus is very persistent. It might even change. But we can get back to a semblance of normalcy, and we should. Get used to sitting next to each other with a mask on, for example, rather than being spread apart like that. For the vast majority of people, we should be able to work, commute, and socialize, play sports, and all that quite normally, hopefully in about a month or so. Let's see what the ministerial task force says soon. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Associate Professor Ong. Next, we welcome Mr. Roy Tan, who will share the results of a recent survey preparing for a workplace of the future. Roy, please.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Ong, for giving us the expert advice as well as the stunts for NUS. So today, when we first started this exercise, we always wanted to put some sort of voice to it. So I take it as it is therefore our job, or my job, to represent all the audience here, as well as the audience online, of some of our voices. So I will try to use we, because I'm sure that myself, as well as the panelists here, contributed to the big number that we see here. So when we first started this exercise, we wanted to also come out with a survey to give a voice of what our community is about. So what we did then is to start this survey that was between 17th to 23rd January. And I'm pleased to say we have about 3,000, right down to the last number, 3,127 respondents of us pitching into our voice. From what we see, this is quite a good demographic size, as well as a good representative in terms of the units, the roles, the length of service, as well as the age group. So what we are saying over here, what we are trying to say here is that, what is the current work arrangement and job scope? Overwhelming 87% of us are saying that, we are already on flexible work arrangement, while the rest of us are on essential work scheme. So this is a time, maybe I'll spend the next 5 seconds to thank a lot of our colleagues here that is in the essential work scheme. Over the past 2 years, while some of us are working at home, we are spending time, I personally know a lot of my UHC, UCI, as well as NUS IT colleagues who spend a lot of time on campus, taking care of our staff, taking care of students, to make sure our campus is safe as well as vibrant. So thank you for the team for that essential work scheme. So this big group of us then went on to say that, we feel that our job scope do allow us to work from home. And that's something very interesting. What then it mean to the level of comfort of returning to work in office after spending close to probably 2 years now? A good 18% of us says that, we are very comfortable if we were to return back to the office. There is various concerns, and this is what we do see in the survey, is that 42% of those who are somewhat comfortable or uncomfortable says that the risk of infection is one of our concerns. 34% is there still flexibility in work from home? 16% of us says that we need to take care of our family members, be it the younger ones or the older ones. So on, then we have the 5% and 3%. I think what we are hearing here is the level of comfort of returning to work is there, but there are definitely concerns that each and every one are facing at our home. So what exactly is the preferred work arrangement? This is where we overwhelmingly say that, we would like to, and we would like to do a hybrid system. Up to about 1,500 respondents then indicated a preference of hybrid work preference. Between 2 to 3 days of work from home in a week seems to be the most popular. We also see 2 groups who says that, work in office is the best for me, and they cited higher productivity, better communications, better work-life separation. I can attest to that point. Reason is we have our children to take care. I have a wife. I have only 1 living room, and I probably have to take care of everybody. So these are the things that we see that working in the office has its benefits. But the other school of thought then comes in, working from home. Interestingly, higher productivity comes into the same place. So what we are seeing is that there are two schools of thoughts, and there are going to be two schools of practitioners. There's something that working from home, why? Because going to office, there is a fear of COVID infection. There is more flexibility in time management. Maybe true, I'm not so sure, but the whole idea here is that we probably will be hearing different voices. The level of readiness is moving towards flexible arrangement. So we first ask our staff, hey, what do you think? Are you ready, or do you think your office, your unit is ready? Overwhelmingly, we say that, hey, I think I'm ready, our unit is ready towards flexible working arrangement. For reporting managers, we also see that the perception is we are ready to garner our team, get our team ready. But there is a small percentage to say, maybe not really, or that not really at all. We see that 40% is because of the job nature. It could be the essential work office. Then we have 26% who value face-to-face with the teammates, no doubt about it. 18% talks about limitation of resources. It could be IT devices, it could be Wi-Fi at home. By the way, I was told that a lot of our teammates have multiple, it has Singtel, it has StarHub ISPs, just in case. So we are almost doing BCP at home now. So these are the things that we see. There's also reluctance from team members, and this is the perspective we are getting. So what exactly is the desired changes and support? Overwhelmingly, what we also see is that we want to see a change to our work arrangement policy. What exactly do we want? Because we want something that is something that we would love to do, something that we want. But how can we then, as a university together, help each other prepare the team for that? A big chunk says about policy. A big proportion talks about resources, as well as getting ready the infrastructure. So that's something that we have talked about, or we have shown our hands. Now, in summary, we kind of like briefly put them into three categories. One is the policy considerations. What we would like to have a general posture, but we allow that local empowerment. That's something that each and every office is different. My office could be very different from yours because we work very differently, or that we have different job nature. We would therefore also want a framework for fair assessment of performance in consideration this hybrid arrangement. The infrastructure and resources is also important. We want a lot more social spaces, retaining personal workspaces, but most importantly, the enhanced support of both physical and digital resources, and that's what will help us administratively, teaching and research needs. We would like to also enhance support facilities that we will think it will make us a better workforce. The other part is about culture and mindset. We think that we want to have an agile and forward-thinking workforce. I don't want to look in the what we call old-fashioned. We also want to strengthen the cohesiveness, and most importantly, raise awareness of health and well-being. Now, all that being said, one of the most over or underlying that we hear on all our surveys is that the communications that provide a clear and regular update is what we want to do. And this is why our town hall is done in a way of various conversations. And in the next town hall, what we intend to do is to have focus group as well as a conversation that we truly and wanting to hear all the responses which will be meaningful to this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Next, we welcome Mr. Kevin Chua, who will share about the support offered by OHR to the NUS community. Kevin, please.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this town hall. Really appreciate the time that you're here on site or on Zoom. So here to share with you the kind of support that OHR can provide for the NUS community, particularly to the RM, reporting managers, and the HODs. Flexible work arrangement policy. Well, first of all, does NUS even have such a policy? Can we work from home? And where can I find this policy? Okay, if you talk about this type of flexible work, not recommended, unless you're a yoga expert or some contortionist in your background. Okay, we actually do have a flexible work arrangement, and the policy And the policy has been there since pre-pandemic, probably about 2015 or so timeframe. But many people maybe don't even realize that we have such a policy and we allow people to have flexible working. So let me just share a little bit about how to go and find it, because while I will go through here in brief detail, you may want to read all the fine prints. Okay, so on the staff portal, there's this front page and all the boxes. Look for HR and benefits. And in there, there's this segment there. You click that. That's how you find it. And let me just share with you another way to find it, which is you go into the university policy portal. As you know, this is a policy portal that all the policies of the university is there. You search by the policy owner. You look for Office of Human Resource, and then you scroll down. You find the flexible work arrangement policy. So as I say, we do have a flexible work arrangement policy. It's been around for a long time, and we actually recently revised it last year to make it even more flexible. Yeah. So let me maybe just go into the key points of this policy and what it entails, in case people don't know. It allows for flex time and it allows for flex place. So there are recommended times which people can start and end work, starting from 7:30 and all the way, I think, until about 9 o'clock or 9:30. Flex place, wherever you work, whether in the office or at home. And just bear in mind, this is pre-pandemic, that we actually allow people to work from home, pre-pandemic. The key consideration is that there must be minimum impact to service. Minimum impact to service. So that's a key consideration. The business needs to take precedence. And then there's no additional resource that's required, and HOD approval. So don't even need to come to HR. HOD can approve. Okay, so these are the key guidance, the key principles, and it's left to the departments, the HOD. And there are also guidance given to managers in our current policy. Yeah, and some of the key points would be manage based on outcome, not face time. Let's not encourage presenteeism. The people are just in the office and you don't let them go home. You just want to see them. Check in regularly, particularly those that are remote workers. Maintain trust, clear comms, and then give regular feedback and regular assessment. And finally, there's a whole range of FAQ in our current policy. What we are thinking about, particularly with the hybrid working and the future of work and all of that, is to revise this policy to make it even more flexible. So we already today have such a policy. And I should also just add that our current policy allows for ad hoc work from home. So for example, somebody next day needs to go and see a dentist for, 1 hour. And say, okay, never mind, you just work from home, use your lunchtime, go and see a dentist and carry on. It also allows for more, inverted comma, permanent arrangement. Somebody who says that, my child is having PSLE and I want to work from home in the afternoon for half a year. It allows for that. Currently, our policy allows for that. The initial thoughts of a new policy that will allow even more flexibility and discretion by HOD. So today, our policy say you must start at 7:30 or 8 o'clock or 8:30, etc. We perhaps should do away with it. And we allow for complete flexibility so long as the department can manage. We may even allow for split shift. And what do I mean by split shift? Somebody may come to a manager and say, can I come to work? I work from home, I start at 7 o'clock in the morning, I work until 8:30, 9 o'clock, and then I come to office. So there's a bit of time in between you take for commute, and then you work until 4 o'clock, and then you go home, and then you continue working until 7 o'clock. Today, our policy theoretically doesn't allow. We may allow for it, because maybe that suits some people better. Yeah, we may allow for arrangement where we will allow for arrangement by the whole department and not just individuals. Yeah. So for example, in the OFN case of finance, they are going, at least some portion of it will be permanently hybrid. And we will allow for that. Now, currently our policy don't quite do that. So some examples about the flexibility, and we want to hear your thoughts as we think through this, is that, you know, particularly say it's a student-facing type workforce, the employees. Perhaps during term time, the team needs to be on campus. And during holiday time or vacation time, most people work from home. So we may allow that, yeah? Or completely flexible time or compressed work week. Now, let me explain this, what I mean by compressed work week. It is different from, well, compressed work week means that instead of working 8 hours a day, we work, say, 10 hours for 4 days. It works for some units, it doesn't work for other units because you need coverage on day 5. If your team has a lot of shift workers, that may make sense. Yeah, so instead of working 8-hour shift, you work 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift, and you could consider doing that. Yeah, so compressed work week, you work lesser number of days per week, but in total the same number of hours. So we may allow for that. With this increased flexibility and discretion for the HOD, you know, there will be a need for more HR partner support, you know, and your HR partners would be able to provide consultation for you to say, will this work or will this not work? And I think one key issue that we have heard from previous engagement is the perception of equity, you know, particularly for essential workers and all of that, to say, hey, why is it that one bunch of people can have so much flexibility and I don't? So that is the issue that I think as managers, as HOD, we do need to manage. And the HR business partner can come and support you. Yeah. So there are another, as I say, support, but they are very unique and very customized. So, you know, I cannot cover all of them here. It's best to reach out to your HRBP, reach out to me, and then we can have a conversation as to say what can be done. All right, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Next, we welcome Ms. Catherine Koh, who will share on the support offered by NUS Health and Wellbeing to the NUS community. Catherine, please.
Okay, hi guys. So my name is Catherine. I am an organizational psychologist by training, and I am with the Health and Wellbeing team. And a big part of what I do is I help to oversee mental health programs that we provide for our staff and our students, but also in terms of the overall mental health strategy that we take. Okay, so before I joined NUS, I used to go down to tons and tons of companies, hundreds of them, and I would ask them, what kind of mental health programs do you have in your company lah? Okay, and they go, oh, I have very good programs. Okay, I got free counseling service for all of my staff. Okay, I also got stress management talk lah. Okay, got family day, eat with your family. Okay, all of these things. Jeans day, can wear jeans on Friday. Yeah. And they go, yeah, this is very good, right? Okay, so then I ask them this question. Okay, imagine I want you to join my company. Okay, come and join my company. I'll give you double whatever you're getting now. Yeah, but there's one problem. Okay, in the company there's this pipe lah, and the pipe is broken. Okay, and there's toxic fumes that are being spewed. Okay, and the chance of you getting lung cancer is about 80%. Yeah, but because I'm an employer of choice, I give you free doctors, the best doctors in the house to cure you if you get it. Okay, I also every day give you free masks to wear so that you know you don't have to breathe in so much of the fumes lah. Okay, and then I go, will you join me? 100% of the time they say, no way, go and fly kite lah. Okay, you pay me 3 times, 4 times, also no way. Yeah, and then I go, okay, so what would you guys do if I told you lots of companies are actually doing that today, but with our mental health? Okay, and so what they're saying is, come and join my company lah. I work you until you want to die, you get anxiety, depression, and then free counseling law. Okay, free stress management workshop for you. Yeah, so this is absolutely not enough, and we need to go beyond this, okay, and take a more upstream approach to tackling mental health. So what we did here in NUS is we developed an in-house framework. Okay, it's called the Wellness Framework, and what we do is we map out well-being on a spectrum. Okay, and we see well-being as where stages where everyone goes up and down on their well-being journey. There's a maintain or thrive stage, stages where I feel, well, I need a bit more management, I might be a bit at risk. Stages where I feel I need intervention, and stages where I feel, I'm recovering and I'm trying to get back into the workforce. Yeah. So what we do in this framework is we're trying to systematically map out programs for each stage of the person's well-being journey. Okay. And so what we did was we tried to map out all the programs we had in NUS, okay, into this framework, and we wanted to make sure we were accountable at 3 levels. The first level was culture and strategy. Okay, so we wanted to make sure that was leadership commitment. And so one of the things that we did was we set up a mental health steering committee to get leaders, senior leadership involved in crafting the strategy and making sure that we have the sufficient budget and resources available. And then at the next level, we wanted to make sure we had the systems and infrastructure in place to support our staff. So things like policies, are we reviewing our systems to see how we can manage the stress before our staff get sick? Okay. And then lastly, very important to have, okay, your support services and resources. So now we talk about things like stress management, things like your counseling services, which are essential and very, very important to have as well. Yeah. This is what it can look like, very, very complex when we started to plot in. I'll actually show you the one that we use, the working copy in NUS. So this is the one in NUS, very, very complex. We even tried to color code it, so things in green are things that we already have, things in orange are things that we're still working on and trying to put in place, so in progress, and things in blue are things that we feel we need more support on, okay? And we have to beef up resources. It's also very important that we look at reviewing effectiveness and monitoring that so that we make sure the programs that we're implementing are actually working and are useful. Okay, so we want staff to also be taken care of at each level. At the first level and most basic level, self-care. Okay, so we want them to have access to resources to be able to look after themselves. Next, we want our peers to be able to look out for each other, our colleagues. We want our managers to be able to look out for their staff and flag if they need more support. And then we have our psychologists and our psychiatrists available if intervention is really needed. So what are some of these resources, okay, that we have that you guys have access to? The first thing we did when we set up our health and well-being team was to make sure we had solid in-house clinical psychologists to support everybody. The team is great. I see them every day, and they're such wonderful, wonderful people. And if you guys need to get in contact with them for a few services, which I'll share. Okay, so number one, if you just feel I'm not at the top of my game, I just want to have a chat and a check-in with them, we can do that. If you feel you need something more in depth, like I need a therapy session or a counseling session, we also offer that. If you feel this is not just about me, my team is having some issues, I want to bring someone in to facilitate discussions about that, to find out what are some of the problems in the system that we need to fix, we offer that as well. And if you feel, for example, I want to return to the workforce after taking a break for mental health issues or just taking a break, how can I do that? We also provide those return to work services for mental health. Yeah. If you feel, well, I don't want to speak to an in-house psychologist in NUS, we also have external service providers that provide counseling support that you can reach out to, and it's called NUS Heart. Okay, the hotline is over there. You get up to 5 free sessions, and it's also available to your dependents if they need. If you don't even want to use that and you want to use your own private one, you can claim from your group medical insurance up to $1,000. And if, for example, you want to form peer support systems and build a community of support, we also provide training programs for you to do that in your teams. Yeah. So if you are a manager and you want to read a guide on how we can make our workplaces more mentally healthy, how to do check-ins with your teams, we have that as well. We developed that this year. There are lots of e-learning modules on how you can look out for signs of distress, lots of well-being articles that we are curating from our team of psychologists and counselors. And lastly, what Clarence was talking about, we had the Are You OK campaign. We're actually in the midst of our second one right now. What we saw in the last campaign was very heartening. After that first campaign, hundreds of people reached out to us for a well-being check-in. We found that people who've heard of our campaign had better mental health. People were more keen to support their colleagues, and the stigma was being reduced slightly. So we felt the need to do this again, and we're hoping to do this every year to continue to destigmatize mental health in the workplace. Yeah, so last slide on what we can do is firstly, be aware of these resources and reach out if you need support. Yeah, share our circulars and our workshops. If you want customized workshops, we can build that for you. Invite us to share the initiatives at your team, your town hall, kickstart peer support programs in your own little communities. And lastly, I sound like a YouTuber, like, follow, and share on all of our social media pages. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. That's it from me.
Thank you, Catherine, and a thank you again to our chair and panelists for their sharing session today. We now kick off our final segment, Conversation on the Future Workplace, chaired by DPA and Roy. We are slightly overrun in terms of the time, but rest assured we have the full time for the conversation. If you haven't sent in your questions, now is the time, dear colleagues, to put in those burning questions. Please scan the QR code now on the screen to access Poll EV. For colleagues online and Zoom, you can click on the link in the chat window. You can also ask your questions directly using the microphones in the aisles or by clicking the raise hand icon in Zoom. Roy, who's facilitating, will give you the cue to ask your questions. We now pass the time over to DPA and Roy.
Hello everybody. Hi. Do send in your questions, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can today. We have received some of the questions ahead of time, and I thought I'd take a few moments to answer some of them roughly in categories. Can we have the slide, please?
So the first question that
this
we
one.
have, it's what is a happy workplace? I mean, for the past week, we have actually received quite a number of questions. One of the burning question is, what is a happy workplace? Interestingly.
Yeah, so I thought we're going to try to spark off a whole bunch of conversations. And of course, the town halls are not the only place that you're going to have this conversation. And we hope that some of your departments, schools, faculties, research institutes can have your own conversations. And this morning, Charming sent me this about something that they have cooking in ISS called What is a Happy Workplace? And if you look at, Charming is here today, so this is his and ISS take on some of the conversations that they're having inside ISS about what is a happy workplace. And safe and clean facilities, welcoming high positivity spaces for strengthening human bonds, availability of staff health and wellness programs, productivity support for a variety of work tasks, a digital workplace, authentic and continuous employee support and engagement, and culture of purposeful, fulfilling work and recognition of good work done. You see, there's a lot of elements in here, not just about the workplace, the physical workplace itself, but how to enable people to digitally work, and of course, to work effectively, remotely, and so on. And they not only do it for themselves, they do enablement for other companies as part of their products or services that they provide. And we'll be very happy to, and he has agreed to come back at a different town hall to share a bit of what are the things they do in their team and as a community of practice, and we can learn from each other all together. The important thing is have a conversation started and have different groups of people who are trying out new and interesting things come and share, and we can all learn from each other. Next slide, please. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of questions about how serious is the university in considering flexible work arrangement. Notwithstanding the fact that many of you have already been a flexible work arrangement for 2 years, but still we attract some questions about how serious we are in having flexible work arrangements. So we think there are two large narratives that we can rally people around. The first one is campus life is important to our students. As our students return to campus for more and more activities, our colleagues, both academic and non-academic, will also be coming back to campus to support them and each other. We are not a distance learning university. We have no aspirations to be a distance learning university. We think campus life is very important to our students. And many of our students come here for on-campus experiences. And part of our work is really to support them and groom the next generation. And a lot of that means there is a campus presence. The second narrative, not yet. Second narrative is we believe there is value in both in-person and remote working. We believe there is opportunity for reimagining office life to build a healthy and vibrant workforce. And we believe that work arrangements will evolve and we should maintain agility. This is quite important. I think the keywords here is reimagining office life. And as Chong-Ming has done in ISS, have a conversation about what will make a happy workplace. moving into the future. Build as much elements of it as possible into it. I think mental wellness is likely to be going to be a very key one to factor in and build it into new work habits, new work routines, new work practices. We have to try to do experimentation. Let's try it out. Well, like I mentioned in an earlier example, OFN is going to try 60-40. Office of Finance is going to try 60-40, and let's see how that works. Then, for instance, they're not going to do hot desking. They're going to try desk sharing, which for them makes more sense because they feel that people rather share a desk than to have no desk at all and come into a random desk every day. So people are going to try different things tactically, and we'll try to invite them to come back and then share with us what works, what doesn't work. Next. Will one size fit all? We can, as you see from Kevin's example of flex work policy or flex time policy, it's going to be increasingly worded quite widely, which allows many permutations. We don't think that one size will fit all because we will have, all of us have very diverse work roles. Some require a lot more campus presence than others. And it is important for us then to empower some of these decisions to be taken locally at the different teams, departments, faculties, and so on, so that we have a heavy dose of local empowerment. We will naturally, as a general posture, keep to as much of we'll keep to the guidance given nationally, that 50% of those who can work remotely can return to the office. But we also want to prepare for a blended default of work from home and work from office. Now, this spectrum is going to be very wide. There will be some parts of the university for which 100% of their teammates will be on campus all the time. There will be some that allows a bit more blended combination. And some part of the year will be 100%, some part of the year won't need to be 100%. So there's going to be very varied permutations. And I think this diversity, end of the day, let's try to build a healthy, vibrant, productive workforce in a workplace. The permutations of which to get there, locally, you have to take a look at your culture of your team, what people are ready for, and then experiment. See whether it works or not. If you go by this particular set of rules, and then evaluate from period to period, and then refine it along the way. Next, we'll try to provide some support along the way. OHR, if you have specific guidance of what can or cannot be done, we'll try to make it clearer for people. And HR will try to provide some answers. Also training, because for instance, managers are a bit anxious about how you're going to measure for performance. So generally, we are measuring for performance. But there is a dose of measuring for presence at the moment. How do you balance or juggle these considerations? So I think there'll be a healthy dose of training that will be required for our managers to navigate this space. HWB, we saw peer support training. I think that's quite interesting. How do you help build up the competency of each other to help each other manage our anxieties in terms of peer support? OETU will help facilitate conversations. If you need their help, reach out to them. If you want to do your own focus groups, own conversations within your team, you need facilitators, come to OETU, they'll come and help you out. Our University Health Center, if you have staff that have very specific COVID inquiries, maybe their own situation, they feel very anxious because of their own personal family situation and so on, and they need sound medical advice, informed medical advice, our doctors can stand by and have one-on-one conversations with them. Okay, so some of the central support we'll provide as well. So I'll leave the time now to take a look at some of the other questions that have come in earlier, but I thought that gives you a starting stake.
Yeah, so thank you, Clarence. Interestingly, I know that it's 3:15 now, but we are more than happy if the panelists are okay to extend another 15-20 minutes
You need to.
I have 5 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So we'll take.
we'll take the
medical
Prof.
one
Ong's
first.
question first, if I can. There's 2 questions that come in for maybe Prof. Ong can help us. One is a relatively serious question, and the other one is slightly light-hearted. The first one is for Prof. Ong. COVID is a present danger, and action by NUS and SG Singapore government is commendable. Holistically speaking, we should also look for other vaccines like that of shingles, flu. Is there any plan for this from the national perspective?
For shingles,
Shingles and flu.
it was in my scope of work last time. It's not in my scope of work this time to look at, let's say, other vaccines. There is a national vaccine committee that looks at most of the baseline vaccines that we need, look at childhood vaccination. So I'm fairly certain they will look at it, and then they will measure the benefit and see whether or not it's worthwhile pushing that out as well. But to put it in perspective, shingles or zoster, which is sort of reactivation of the chickenpox virus, can be quite debilitating when it happens, particularly in older ages. So there are certain segments of the population that may benefit and certain segments that don't. In general, it's not like COVID in terms of the risk to life. That is actually very broad because very few of us have had exposure to a coronavirus before in our lives. So the difference between a pandemic or epidemic vaccine and one that gives you personal protection are quite different. I did mention earlier when I was talking that, I don't know whether you caught it, but that in the longer term, if we're going to live with this virus, the virus will be a bit like an endemic virus. And then a lot of it is going to likely be your own personal protection that you're aiming to actually achieve with the vaccine. That probably will come sometime in the future, in my view, rather than where we are trying to use it to help us to navigate to a safer space that we're trying to do now. So that is the answer I can give you. It's not in my remit. I just give you my point of view as to whether or not they will be looking at it. I hope that helps.
Yep. I think what is interesting is a lot of our professors and experts sit in national boards, national level committees, and sometimes we get a bit confused whether we are talking to Prof. Ong as a faculty member or Prof. Ong as an expert committee. The second thing that is quite interesting, it looks like a crystal ball question, which is quite light-hearted to Prof. Ong. It's, when can we have social team lunch again? I think it's a crystal ball question.
I hope not too far away in the future. I mentioned earlier on that we've built our immunity wall to be quite strong. And if that doesn't allow us to actually move forward on some of these, then it will be very sad, particularly when we see countries with lower vaccination rates apparently throw caution to the wind as well. But I don't think we are a society as a whole that will leave the weakest behind. And I think that the past 2 years have actually shown me that we generally are a society that tries to bring most people along. So when we can assure that most people are safe enough, I think it's likely that that will happen. And within our work settings right now, while it is not yet the case that we can have social sort of gatherings per se, I think in the not too distant future that will happen. How far away? I did mention that the multi-ministry task force will look at the situation that we're in and they'll make a decision on how to move forward on it. Soon, I hope.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed indeed. In fact, it's very interesting because I think I made a lot more decisions about work or talk about work with all my colleagues here when we're having lunch. So a lot of things can actually get sorted out, ironed out during lunch more often than sitting over long Zoom meetings. Some will say maybe even a coffee will just do the trick. So that's something probably our team or our community is looking forward to. So maybe to this end, I thank Prof. Ong first. He has something that he has committed to. So thank you, Prof. Ong, which we will still continue. Thank you, Prof. So don't worry about, because we do have a lot of questions that's coming in and we have limited time, but what I'll do is our team here will consolidate all these questions and probably we try to answer in the next town halls or so. Okay, if we can move on. Interesting question coming from Po EV. Probably Kevin can help us. Regarding the flexible working arrangement policy, the current policy has a 3 months validity period. Can the policy allow for more longer term, permanent, or even default arrangement? And could you also elaborate on the flex place guidance? So 2 parts to the question.
Okay, so the current policy suggests 3 months, but really it doesn't stop a person from after the 3 months reapplying. In the new policy that we are thinking about, we'll give it a bit longer term. Now, I would always advise that there might be a term limit to this rather than open-ended. Yeah, so that both manager and employee can sit down and then say, has the circumstances changed? Has the role changed? What are the environment that has changed? So right now it's 3 months, we can look at that, but it should always be a certain term period. That's what I'll say. And the second question is flex place, is it?
Yes.
So we allow flex place, so I'm not sure what the question is.
They would like to know a little bit on the flex place guidance. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Oh, flex place. So basically you can work from anywhere within a certain parameters, and I'll just go to that in a moment. So I think there are talks about having co-working space in NUS. So if today I'm bored of U Hall, I can work in U Town. And actually, come to think of it, I have done something like that because there was a particular day I had a meeting at BTC. So I spent the whole day at BTC. So that is flex place. And of course, you know, with the alternate work week, 1 day on, 1 day off, you're working from home half the time. I have a colleague who says, you know, I cannot work from home because of young children. But yet I want to avail myself to this 1 week on, 1 week off. So you know what he did? He actually paid money to go into a co-working space. Because I saw him on Zoom, I said, where are you? You're not in the office, and this background looks a bit... Oh, he said he subscribed to a co-working space, and he found a reasonably cheap one, and he works from there. So today our policy allows for that, and we are doing that. I would just caveat it with something that maybe has come up previously. Can our flex place be super flexible that you are working from outside of Singapore? Okay, so I would say that at this point in time, there are legal and compliance issues if you work outside of Singapore for an extended period of time. You are putting yourself at risk. Okay, so number one, just bear in mind, if you are not nationality of that country, you work in that country for a long period of time, you have no legal right to work in the country. That's number one. You know, so if the MOM equivalent wants to find fault with you, potentially you can go to jail. Number two, if you work in a country for an extended period of time, you become liable for that country's personal income tax. So while you pay Singapore income tax, the other country will say, hang on, you are working in my country for an extended period of time, and therefore you need to pay income tax in the host country. Related to this is host country CPF equivalent, so Social Security. Yeah, so if, let's say Malaysia, I think many of us are familiar with Malaysia, if you work in Malaysia for an extended period of time, you have to contribute to EPF, which is the similar thing to CPF. And if you're not contributing to EPF, you are liable. Yeah, so these are the kind of risks that a person takes when he or she is working overseas for an extended period of time. There is another risk, and there's is a tax risk, and I'm not a tax expert. If NUS may deem to have a presence in the country, and therefore NUS has to pay corporate tax in the country. I think it's called the risk of permanent establishment. So if there are tax people around, you will know what I'm talking about. So these are the kind of risks. Now, can you work overseas for a short period of time? Yeah. So if you look at it like, you know, pre-pandemic, people do on business trip. Okay, 1 day here, 2 days there, 1 week here. I think we can close one eye. Yeah, but not extended period of time, because you're putting yourself at risk, you're putting NUS at risk.
Thank you, Kevin. It reminds me when we were first building the University Town, when I spent a lot of my time in UCI previously, that we coined this tagline called "My classroom is everywhere." So it really means that you actually learn anywhere. It need not necessarily be in a classroom in a tutorial. So probably now we can say working from anywhere. So that could be something that is interesting. So we have something for HWB and Catherine. It's an interesting one, or PNC. When can we make use of the school well-being consultation? How is our personal information managed? Is there any escalation to HR, HOD if there are red flags detected? I think it's quite a common question.
So great question. You can use the services immediately. They are ready, already. And these services are confidential, meaning if your manager comes and says, hey, I know my staff is seeing you for a counseling service, can you tell me how they are? We are not allowed to share that information. So we only will need to flag if there is immediate risk to yourself or immediate risk to other people, or if, for example, we need it in court. Yeah. And even then, if we do have to disclose that information, you will be kept in the loop, and we will let you know about that. Yeah, sorry, what was the third question? There was one more, right?
No, just when we make use of this, the personal information, really if there's red flag, what will you do, so and so forth?
Yes. So we do have a team of psychologists, and if it needs to be escalated, that gets escalated to our team. We also do have in-house psychiatrists that we can flag to if we need support as well.
Okay, thank you.
May can just add on. So I'd like to confirm what Catherine has said. Absolutely confidential, no information come to HR. All these months, there's only one case that came to HR because the person was at risk of self-harm and we needed to do something. Yeah, that if you don't want to talk to health and well-being, even though they maintain all this confidentiality, we have the NUS Hub. They are an external vendor. You call a 1-800 number and you get to them. Again, nothing comes back to HR. We don't know who called them. Absolutely nothing at all comes to HR.
Thank you for that assurance. Just in case I don't run this well, and then I go and talk to Catherine go and tell the boss, and then the boss decided to fire me, that's something that is kept confidential. So maybe we also have some time for the audience here, if there's any questions, burning questions from the audience, because we do have a lot from Poll EV, but I thought we spend some time if we have any questions from the floor. They're all nice people.
Or they've sent it through Poll EV.
Yes. Okay, if not, then I'll go back to Poll EV. One of the interesting questions probably for Clarence to answer. It's on this: how do you ensure that staff who work more often from home are appraised fairly? How do you ensure that staff who work more often from home are appraised fairly?
You have to be very clear about outcomes that you are trying to achieve, and have the conversations between your reporting manager and the staff who is working from home. It's important. Whether actually that's true even if you're not working from home. It doesn't quite change the underlying understanding, which is if you can define goals quite clearly. So your goals, when you define goals, if you can make it SMART, or specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, then it makes the appraisal system more transparent. The other thing that you should do to make sure that it's appraised properly is don't just do it once a year. Do it regularly. Have feedback on how the staff is doing on a regular basis. If you can do it, I have this, I mentioned to you, I send out all these little gratitude messages, right? These little gratitude messages also actually is a way of recognizing work done. Because you kind of, what have this person done as a reporting manager? What has this person done in the last week that's worth mentioning, worth appreciating? And then you make sure that you then send something out. And it builds that connection. So make sure you define goals properly or smartly, and do it regularly. Don't do it once a year and then suddenly it is a whole shocker. Okay? Create an open environment where failure or mistakes is not, it's just setting up you for success. So we all aspire to be a world-class university, right? I tell you the road to a world-class is we'll fail our way to world-class. Every time there is something that's not quite right, didn't go as planned and so on, we consider, every time somebody is angry at us for something or other, you can define it as a failure. What is important is learn from that failure and then improve upon it. Okay, so that's my three-pointer for how do you ensure that you can have a good, meaningful appraisal at the end of the year that's considered fair to you. Actually, whether you are working, especially, I suppose, if you are working from remotely. This regular check-in is very important because otherwise you don't see the person, right? Working remotely doesn't mean out of sight, out of mind. You can still engage the person through Zoom and so on, so don't disappear on your reporting manager suddenly, and then the reporting manager doesn't interact with you all year long, and that doesn't make sense.
Actually, there is also a connected question, which is how can we then, the university, ensure the HODs, the RMs adopt the same understanding and appreciation of what you have just said? I think this both Kevin and Clarence. How do we ensure?
That's part of all these town halls and sparking conversations across the university is to try to build this momentum and try to encourage all the different schools and departments to think about the workplace of the future of the work, future of work, not only future of workplace, because some people may think future of workplace is UCI's job, the physical workplace. But actually, part of future of work is about, future workplace is about the future of work. How do you build happy workplaces? And the more examples we have of schools and departments doing it, bringing it to the collective community and making sure that it's forums such as this, that we can share this information, will build up this movement from the ground.
I think that's something that we all has to learn, that it is the outcomes of our work, and it's not necessarily being there in the office from 8:30 to 6 o'clock.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of something we're trying out this year. We don't know how well it will work, but for like admin cluster HODs, we're going to put mental wellness as part of their goals for the year. I never had before, right? Never had mental wellness as one of your goals that you enter.
That's creating stress for us.
Yeah. Even HR being one of it. But let's put it in and see what happens, and see whether we can meaningfully set goals around mental wellness. At least make sure that you have conversations about mental wellness. You must try to kind of think about what mental wellness work practices you are championing in your departments and schools and so on.
So Catherine, I'm coming to you soon. I will have to raise my hands next time I'm being stressed. Okay, so moving on, there is a part about built environment. Maybe I'll try to address. First one is this, with open office being encouraged and hybrid works of working, are there any plans to install office pods for staff to conduct online, offline? Will there also be opportunities for current office setups to be upgraded? I think for this part, let me start first on behalf of UCI. I think the OETU as well as the UCI team is working on a hybrid office concept. Generally, we call it the RNS, the resident, nomadic, as well as social space, is to look into how hybrid workspace, what is required of the built environment, and to support our workforce on that. So that's something that we are pulling it through, like what Clarence has mentioned earlier, that we are starting off this pilot with finance. But we also realize and understand that finance model may not work, say, for HWB, it may not work for OHR, it may not work for CPO. We will make sure that we have that localized context to make it a little bit better, as well as how the workflows are different. So that's something that we are exploring, and we're more than happy to share what have we done, what can be done, so on and so forth. Maybe Clarence. Yeah.
Every time you have new office renovations planned for your department, schools, or faculties, have a thought how we can make it different from the last time. Don't just repeat the same model and just create more cubicles in the workspace. Can create well-being spaces, social spaces, and spaces for co-working, different pods, privacy pods, so that people can do Zoom meetings or private phone calls and so on and so forth.
Okay.
I can also invite you all to come to OHR and take a look at how we have been operating. We've been operating in an open concept since pre-pandemic. I think it was 2016?
2017 probably.
2017.
Yes.
Yeah, so at the central OHR office at U Hall, all of us are on open concept. So come visit us if you have not been to our office.
So we will probably,
Oh, sorry, if I can just add, we're also doing that with the health and well-being team, and we're also looking to implement wellness spaces, net pods, but also work pods at the same time, exercise spaces as well. Yeah.
so I guess this is also one way to show local empowerment, that our different officers, our different units are able to raise up their hands and say these are some of the things. And every time we do a rejuvenation to office spaces, this is something that the UCI team will definitely look into. In the interest of time, we have overrun by probably 20 over minutes now. Probably the last question, which is probably a welfare question to Clarence or Kevin, is will NUS consider providing funds to enable employees to work effectively from home? So am I looking at secret lab? Secret lab chairs, special desks, so on and so forth. Especially as the hybrid work mode is likely to stay on as a long term. So, do you think
I can give a go. I think when the start of the pandemic, we did give some employees a sum of money to help them with whatever transition that they have to do. Would we do that again? I think we are open. I wouldn't say no way. Having said that, just bear in mind most of our money comes from MOE. And most of our money from MOE is actually from taxpayers. So we need to be very mindful of that. We are not like completely commercial organization. We make profit. So everybody $1,000, you all go and buy whatever you want. We just need to bear in mind public perception. If we were to do that, it's like, is that how you spend taxpayer money? Give everybody a razor chair or a secret lab, whatever chair. So we need to bear that in mind. But I wouldn't say that we will not do it.
Okay, I have nothing to add. The short answer is we can consider, but it will not be ostentatious. What we give will not be ostentatious.
I think this also illustrates a point that we are ready to acknowledge all suggestions. We are not running away from suggestions nor ignoring it. What we do is put it into our pocket, and as we develop this conversation, including the next few town halls, we will try to pack it up and in a sense that offer some sort of solutioning as we moved on in this conversation. Unfortunately, I ran out of time, but before I close this session, maybe Clarence, do you have anything to tell us?
No, I say thank you very much for joining us today. I think over 1,000 people joined us online, as well as thanks to the audience here for taking your time. We know you're very busy people, and for hearing us out. And please do join me in furthering these conversations in your schools and faculties, departments, and let's try to keep the conversations constructive. Let's keep it open. Let's keep it positive. If you want to raise an issue, make sure that you're prepared to be part of the solution. Okay? And we'll all join in the journey to make NUS an even better place to work moving forward. Thank you very much, everybody.
So with that, we have come to the end. We will continue to have fun in all our work and in this town halls. And thank you once again, everybody, online as well as those on site. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again to everyone for your very keen participation in today's town hall. Do join us again for more town hall sessions this July. And one reminder, if you have not completed the Organizational Agility Survey, here's the QR code for easy access. We wish everyone a very good day and see you in July.